And today, or this month, we're continuing with another aspect of real estate investment. And like we usually do, the whole essence of the Invest with Clarity session is to help us to open our eyes to opportunities in the real estate investment sector that we can invest, but with clarity. And that is where the name Invest with Clarity comes from. So we can invest, not just putting. I actually believe that, you see, real estate is investment in every ramification, including where you live. So when they say investment in real estate, invest in real estate, people just think of, okay, buying land or buying property. Even where you live is investment. I'm sure many of us, just like we had in that last song, or that would be my guy, right? I don't know how many of us have read Winning. What's the title of this book again? Jeez. You know the book I'm talking about, Winning Big, or Tedola's last book, where he talked of that he was staying somewhere on the mainland. Because he needed to do some things, he sold his house on the mainland, to go and rent somewhere on the island. The guy was investing in his environment. That was an investment in himself, right? To be able to position himself for what he wanted. So real estate is investment in every ramification. So this evening I want to say good evening and welcome to this session where we're going to be talking about another aspect of real estate investment, and throughout the month of May we'll be looking at Agro Real Estate. And this particular episode we're calling the Big Shift. The Big Shift. Why Agro Real Estate is the next wealth frontier. And we're looking at, we're saying land is good, but productive land is better. Land is good, but productive land is better, right? That is what we're looking at in today's series. And I want to say thank you for joining this session. I want to say thank you and welcome to the month of May. In our usual manner, we say Happy New Month. Yeah, this is our first meeting in the month of May. I say, this is our first meeting in the month of May. So, this month we're going to have a very important conversation, not just about land, not just about farming, but about where wealth is quietly moving to. So, once again, I want to say tonight's session is titled The Big Shift. Why Agro Real Estate is the next wealth frontier. Now, let me say this from the beginning. Most people think of land the old way. Yeah, you think of land the old way. You buy it, you fence it, leave it there, then pray, then appreciation. I pray that appreciation will happen. And yes, appreciation is good, true. Yeah, but the world is changing. Things are changing now. Not the way. In fact, a lot of things are changing. The world itself, everything is changing. Smart investors are beginning to ask a different question. And that's sort of what we're looking at. This question is, can my land do more than just sit there? You know, I tell people that a number of things that we do in Meaningful Realtors, they're not just accidental. They're not mere coincidences. They are orchestrated. Just before I came into this session, true, based on last month's presentation series, a prospect called me and he was making inquiries. Okay, he's a young man, he started doing investment, he has invested he's bought some land, then he's actually interested in the co-ownership scheme and he wants to go into it. Then along the line he now asked me, okay, what if he has bought a land and the land is just there, and what can he do with it? I told him, leave it there. I told him, leave it there now, leave the land there. You bought the land, you want it to appreciate, leave it there. Except if it is farmland, right? That is probably when you want to think of, okay, but he ended up saying, okay, what if you get people who want to lease the land? I said, fine, lease it to them. So, what smart investors are asking, back to that question, can my land do more than just sit there? That question is changing investment conversations globally. Yeah, even on a global scale, right? But let's even look at our own environment. Because the future may not belong only to people who own land. It may belong more to people who own productive land. Note that. It's not just for people who own land, But who own productive land? The land that grows, land that produces, land that creates recurring value. And that is the conversation we're starting tonight. That's the conversation we're starting tonight. We're looking at, over the next few weeks, we'll break this down step by step. We'll look at why agro real estate is gaining attention globally, how structured agro investments work, not just investment, agro investment, not the word, structured agro investment. Why farm-based assets are becoming attractive to smart investors, right? We'll look at that. How professionals and diaspora investors are positioning quietly. They are positioning quietly. In fact, about a couple of days back, I just remembered there was the time my boss sometime ago. This was some years back. Some people, the opportunities just come in like that. Just like the one you're going to listen to over this series. And it's only those who take position that will benefit from it. So, there's no pressure. All we're going to be doing is just giving some clarity. This man, while the palm thing is booming now, as far back as like about 5-6 years ago, he said he already had a palm plantation, which was his retirement plan. But then it was eating. Now the opportunity is coming to you. I wonder what you will do with it. Because many people are working hard for income, but very few are positioning for long-term wealth systems. And maybe that is the real difference. Before we go deeper, let me ask you a question. A very simple one. A very simple question. Have you ever looked at an area years later and said, I wish I bought land there when it was still cheap? The truth is that almost everybody has that story. I've given my own story repeatedly. How somebody offered me waterfront land, somewhere some years ago, about ₦1 million, less than ₦1 million. I left it and ran away. But today, that same area today, land is selling for almost 70 million. That's the truth. I ran away. In fact, I felt like, why would this man bring me to this place? He wanted to do me a favor. He was reciprocating the gesture I did for him. For me, I felt like the man was being wicked, bringing me to that place. I ran away. So I just hope that will be your story after listening to last month's series, and now you're going to hear another one, and you're still thinking, well. So imagine not just owning land in the right location, but owning land that is actually producing value over time. Just imagine that. That is where this conversation begins, and that is where that's what we're going to be talking about in the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks after now. The global shift nobody is talking about is what we want to look at next. Step back for a moment. Just step back and just think. Yeah, my Facebook family, you're following too. Okay, because the world is changing and smart money usually moves before headlines become popular. Like I told you of my boss, smart money moves before everything becomes popular. Today, some of the biggest global conversations are around food security, inflation, scarcity, climate resilience, asset preservation. Why? Somebody should ask, why all this so? Because people are beginning to realize something very practical. No matter how advanced the world becomes, people will still eat. Yes or yes? Can somebody answer me? Will people still eat? No matter how tough things get, will people not eat? They will still eat. Food demand keeps rising, population keeps growing, available productive land keeps shrinking, and that creates an opportunity. Globally, agricultural land has increasingly become a strategic asset class because it's evident, and I say globally, yes. Not just because it is trendy, but because it solves a permanent human need. And this is where Nigeria becomes interesting. Yeah. We're talking about Nigeria. I'm not selling land in Ghana. I'm not talking about real estate investment in Ghana. I'm talking about Nigeria. And this is where Nigeria becomes interesting. For us in Nigeria, we're sitting on massive agricultural potential. So many years ago, like about almost 30-something years now, some Americans came to Nigeria. And as we were trapped, I was opportune to be among those that were in their entourage, trying to act as their tour guides. We're taking them around. I remember we were traveling on a particular route. As we were traveling, I think along the Lagos-Ibadan Express route, and you saw vegetation to the right and to the left, not what it is now, what it used to be then. And this was seeing pawpaw tree and everything. One of these guys had to ask me, who planted those things? I said, nobody planted them, they just grew. He couldn't believe it. That is how fertile our soil is. And that even in your own, if you have a compound now, just eat eat mango or eat any seed. Use a wash pepper and just pour it on the ground. 1 week after come back, you see it start growing. So in Nigeria, we're sitting on massive agricultural potential, large population, strong food demand, expanding on the urban market, yet many people still overlook agro-based assets. For how long? Sometimes because they think, agri is stressful. Or, yeah, that could be the reason. In fact, somebody like me, I never loved agri. I'm not really sure I'm cut out for it. Maybe. Or agri is stressful, farming is not for me. Well, but agro real estate is not necessarily about becoming a farmer. That is the difference. Agro real estate, hear that, is not about becoming a farmer. It's about owning productive real assets. That mind shift is very, very important. So when they tell you to invest in agro, it's not that you are going to become a farmer. This is another opportunity that is opening up to you that you better think of it very well. Because we're looking at the different, we're talking about the mind shift. At this point, we want to look at the difference between ordinary land and productive land. Let's simplify this. Let's break it down. Traditional land investment works mainly on appreciation. You buy, you wait, hopefully value increases, hopefully, and in many cases it does. But productive land adds another layer. When we're not talking about productive land, it has potential for appreciation, it has potential for yield, it has potential for long-term cash flow, and equally intergenerational value. Well, so somebody was saying it that where you call VGC today, used to be a palm plantation before it was converted to what it is, and the original owners are still entitled to benefit from that land. You can imagine how much they will be cashing out up till now from them. Okay, so with these few points, that's appreciation, yield, long-term cash flow, and intergenerational value, the conversion changes, right? So think about it this way: two people buy land, one buys regular dry land and waits for development, the other buys into productive agricultural land tied to long-term output. Both of them may gain appreciation, but one asset has a potential to generate recurring value. That is the distinction. That's just the difference. Excuse me. Yeah, and this is why agro real estate is gaining attention. Now let's make it a bit more relatable. Many professionals understand the idea of passive income, rental property, dividend stocks, fixed income, but agro real estate belongs in that broader wealth conversation, especially when structured. Because wealth is not only about buying assets, it's about buying assets that can keep working. Imagine the case of a man that bought land years ago on the outskirts of a growing area. At the time, people thought he was wasting money. Nothing around, bush everywhere. Years later, imagine what happened. Development came, roads came, demand came. Suddenly, everybody understood. Now, imagine if that land had also been productive all those years. Just imagine. Not just waiting, but the land had been working. That is the shift we're discussing tonight. That's what we're actually looking at tonight. And well, now at this point, we want to look at why palm-based assets are quietly attracting attention. Because that's what we're going to devolve this whole thing into. Palm-based, yes. There are other numerous areas of agro real estate, but this, for our own conversation, we're just going to look at one. Now, let's narrow this conversation down to this particular area of agro real estate. Honestly, palm-based agro real estate. This is not surprising. Why? Because palm products are deeply connected to everyday life. Everyday life. You find palm produce in food, in cosmetics, in industrial products, household consumption. Demand exists locally as well as globally. And unlike trends that happen after a few years, palm is tied to long-term consumption patterns. That is, it's equally involved in energy generation. So you can see palm, you can see in my local parlance, we have this saying that one Mary the ló ń bend the ọ̀pẹ. I will interpret for my global, for my diaspora audience. Say, in a palm tree, you have nothing less than 16 different products. Nothing less than 16 different products. So let me clarify something. We're not going too deep into investment structure tonight. No, that will come next week or in subsequent series. But tonight is simply about understanding why attention is shifting, why we are moving from regular land investment to agro real estate, and why we are looking at palm-based agro asset. Palm plantation that attract palm plantation, they are attractive for so many long-term reasons. They are attractive to investors for so many reasons. Number one, they are tied to real assets. Two, they operate within a real demand ecosystem. Real demand, not assumed demand. They combine that. We're talking about palm plantation now. They combine land value with productive potential. They can support long-term wealth planning. You know, this thing is very real. Just last August, I was in a particular environment, and somebody, a former colleague, a banker, brought someone to me who wanted to sell the land that they had used for palm plantation for over almost 30 years. He now wanted to sell that land. He was putting an estimate on that land for about over 2 billion or thereabouts. That was after they had extracted so much value from that property. Fantastic idea. Fantastic. So oil palm trees are long-term productive assets. Once mature, they can continue producing for decades under proper management. And that changes how investors think. We are no longer thinking only about will land appreciate. We are also thinking about what is the land capable of producing over time. I just gave you a real life case now. So that is a different investment mindset for anyone who is investing in land. And not just that, it's also a sustainable one over the period. For everything that people think about, there are always some misconceptions. So we want to look at what are some of the misconceptions about agro investment or agro real estate. Let's address this. We call that the elephant in the room. You see, when many people hear agro investment, what immediately comes to their mind? Stress, village life, daily supervision, farming tools, farming equipment, labor wahala, and all that. And with that fear stops many intelligent people from exploring opportunities. My brother here, who incidentally is on this call anyway. Before he left the shores of this country, I remember way back then he invested in fish farming, and there was that crisis. He was doing his own business. He was working. I think he was still working, but he invested in that. But how professional were those managing it? That's another issue. So those are some of the things that come to mind. You start thinking of how are you going to manage equipment and all that. Well, because of that fear, many people don't go into agro investment. But structured, remember I said that earlier, structured agro real estate investment is evolving. Today, there are models that allow professionals to participate without personally running farming operations. And that is important because the average banker, executive, entrepreneur, or diaspora professional already has a demanding life. The issue is no willingness, it is structure. People want investment that they understand, that are structured, that is transparent, that is properly managed, and that is long-term focused. And that's what we can always trust meaningful realtors. We have your back. Look at what we talked about last year. I know many people have reached out to me between last month, between last month and now, who have made up their mind and they have put their money into what the opportunity we showed them last month. And today we're bringing you another one. This month we're bringing you another one. And that is why investment models are evolving. Next week we'll be looking at how these structures, we'll be breaking down these structures properly. But today we're just making you see the mind shift of why you need to move from what used to be to what is. Like I told the young man who called me earlier, just before this call, I told him that there are different No, it's not as if this one now is superlative to the previous one. It depends on your objective. It depends on, fine. I mean, I'm going into financial advisory now. We'll do more of that. Just give me a call, right? Just call Mr. Call Meaningful Realtors. We have our numbers, +234 703 091 0000, +234 703 091 0000. Give me a call. We have your back. will have your back every day and any time to guide you, depending on the state or the phase of life that you are in. Depending on your objective, will tell you what is best for you. Now, let me make this a bit personal. Many people work for years. Coming back to the emotional connection between what we're looking at, and what we're going to be looking at. Yes, many people work for years. They earn money, they build careers, they acquire things, but eventually a deeper question comes: what exactly am I building that will outlive active income? That is true. See, if you have to work for every money you need, right? The financial whatever I say, if you have to work for every money you need, you'll almost work till you die. That is where these opportunities coming in. That question matters. Very, very important. What exactly am I building that will outlive active income? Especially in a world where inflation keeps rising, where job certainty is changing, where preserving value has become as important as making money. That is why many wealthy families globally think long term. They think long term. They think in assets, they think in systems, they think in legacy. And you and I, what are we thinking about? Productive land has historically remained part of that conversation. Not because it is flashy, but because it is foundational. Productive land is foundational. Maybe that's why some investment survive generations. Yeah, true. And they are tied to things society will always need, like palm plantation. So you may be asking questions, and honestly, you should. Every smart investor asks questions. Is agro real estate risky? Every investment carries some level of risk, but risk reduces when structure is clear, when documentation is proper, and when management is credible. Also, when expectations are realistic. You don't make unrealistic expectations, and when the model is transparent. But do I need millions before I can start? That's another question. Not necessarily. One of the interesting things about modern investment structure is accessibility. Different entry levels now is it. Give me a call again. We'll guide you through on how much you need to put in, how you can start. You don't need tens of millions. With just a couple of millions, you can start and go into this investment. Right? The next thing, another question that somebody may ask is, do I need farming experience? Not at all. Not at all. Next week we'll explain why. So let's look at it this way. The goal is not to know everything. The goal is to understand enough to position wisely. You don't want to know everything, but to know enough to enable you position wisely. And I want to close with these thoughts. There are actually two kinds of people doing major shifts. Two kinds of people. The first group waits until everybody already understands. By then, prices have changed. Opportunities have narrowed. The advantage is smaller. The second group pays attention early. Not carelessly anyway. Not emotionally. But thoughtfully. They learn early. They position early. They grow gradually. And years later, people call them lucky. Yeah, they say lucky. They say they are lucky. Well, maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it was just awareness. Getting informed by people like meaningful realtors, like we are hearing now. What are you going to do? So the final question before I end is, what if the next middle wealth shift is not just about owning property, but owning productive assets tied to real human needs? If that's what paying attention to. So, if tonight's session opened your mind to new possibilities, join the Investment with Clarity series. You can join our inner circle. Give me a call. Once again, my number is +234 703 091 0000. Yeah, the Investment with Clarity inner circle. We have an inner circle where we talk deeper into some of these things. Excuse me. While you do that, stay connected for week 2. You can request the Agro Real Estate Starter Guide. Yes, we'll give you some guide, some necessary information, and begin asking better investment questions. In the all of this, no pressure, no rush, just clarity. Because smart investing is not always about moving fast. Sometimes it is about seeing early. So that is it for today. Thank you for joining us. For next week, we're going to be talking about how the model works. How the model works. Understanding agro real estate investment structure. That's what we're going to be talking about next week. If you enjoyed this week's series, we're going to make the recording available maybe for a couple of days. You can view it. You can call me back. You can reach back to me. I can share that with you. You can see it. But more importantly, next week we'll be discussing how agro real estate investment models work. If you are connecting with us, there's nothing stopping you. You can share the link, the invitation link, with other people in your circle. Don't just succeed alone. You know, I will interpret it. It says one rich man in the middle of in the midst of 9 poor people is averagely poor. Don't be the only successful person in your clan. Spread the good news to other people. Get them to see the opportunities. Encourage them to lock into the opportunities, and everybody get better together. So once again, next week we'll be looking at how agro real estate investment models work, co-ownership and managed plantation system, what investors should look out for, how returns are typically structured, why many professionals prefer structured participation models, because opportunity is good, but understanding is better. Once again, I say thank you for connecting with me on this series. I remain yours as always, Mr. Meaningful, the only meaningful man in the real estate industry. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for connecting. I appreciate you. We still have a few minutes. Maybe you have any question, you can indicate by raise of hand. In case you have any question, I'll be willing to address your question briefly before we move on to the next. Well, I got a couple of meetings after now. Just in case you do, you can raise your hand, or you can reach out to me privately. A couple of people most of the people on this call, they are my contact. Okay, Abiodun, you raised your hand earlier, you dropped it again. You raised your hand earlier. Anybody with a question? I'll be willing to attend to your question briefly. Okay, no question. Well, I want to say thank you again for connecting. Okay, can I invest additional money in my already established co-ownership? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Within this month, well, you can still do. You can still do. So we can talk about that. Thank you very much, Abiodun. Thanks for believing in Meaningful Realtors. Thank you for believing in the Meaningful Realtors vision. We appreciate you, like every other person who has been coming along with us. For those who are still sitting on the fence, I told you, people are already making decisions, right? They're already making decisions. Yeah, we'll talk about whether it's going to be the same contract or another contract. I think it's better. I would even suggest that you make them different contracts. But we can talk about that after this call. Once again, I say thank you to everybody who have connected. Oh, I didn't even comment. I'm sure you would have seen me wearing my local man's cap on my shirt there. Because I'm going to the farm. That's why I dress that way. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Bye. See you next week. Bye for now.